Hello, everybody. Wyatt Claypool here, back yet again to talk about the British Columbia provincial election because a lot of fun stuff has been happening in the polls. It's basically playing out the way I had been predicting for months now, that there was going to be a lot of undecided voters, especially since the BC United Party decided to take a dirt nap, who are going to be trying to decide whether they're going to find their new home in the BC NDP and with Premier David Eby or with John Rested in the BC Conservative Party. And I was saying that when it's an incumbent government that you are already not supporting, if you are a United supporter or you just were undecided since last election, you're pretty unlikely to jump on board now. You know every single piece of information you need to know about them because they've been running the province for 7 straight years. If they haven't wooed you yet, it's pretty hard to be convinced now, especially when they don't even have a good record. In 2015, Stephen Harper ended up losing to Justin Trudeau because he ran a campaign that basically just said, well, vote for us because we've been doing a pretty good job and the other guys could be worse. It was not particularly inspiring. The BC NDP have an even tougher job than Harper. They've been in for a while and they've not done a single thing right. And so as we've been getting closer and closer to the election, you'll notice that as we get towards there, the undecided voters are naturally coming down, and the BC NDP are borderline getting none of them. It's basically going 2/3 to 3/4 towards the BC Conservatives. So let's do a step-by-step walkthrough day by day of the polling. Obviously, the polling kind of gurgles back and forth a little bit because it's IVR polling by Main Street Research. So they'll call people up, say, hey, which party are you going to vote for? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And they usually randomize the order so they don't get a response bias because they always put one party as number one and it reads out first. But so we just have to take each day with a grain of salt, but it's the overall trend you should care about. So day one here of their daily tracking poll, they had 11% undecided, 4% saying they're going to go for another party. I would assume that's mostly just going to be people who are also undecided, who used the another party option as other, basically. You have the Greens at 8%, the Conservatives at 39%, and the NDP at 37%. Day two, NDP 38%, Conservatives 38%, 11% undecided, 5% saying another party. So we still have around the same amount of people who don't really know where their vote's going to go. Greens still holding at 3%. We go to day three here. The Greens were holding at 8%. I accidentally just repeated the number 3 when I was looking at day 3 on my list here. But so day 3, we have the NDP takes an ever so slight lead over the Conservatives, 39% to 38%. But we still have 10% undecided, 4% saying other parties, Greens still 8%. And then we get to day 4, where it goes 40% BC Conservatives, 38% BC NDP, 9% undecided, 4% other, 9% Green. So as it's come down by a couple of points overall, we're seeing it start to trend into the Conservative Party's direction. Day 5, this is a really big one. It goes to 9% undecided, 3% another party, 8% Green, 42% Conservative, 38% NDP. Now, this is from day 6 to this one kind of contracts a little bit back to 40-40. I believe when it's only decided voters, it's like 41-40 for the Conservatives, or it's like 43-42 after you remove all the undecideds. But overall, the Conservatives are starting to win those undecided voters by a very good margin. If they keep it up, if they just keep on hammering the NDP on all their policy failures and the fact that the NDP are not serious about fixing any of the problems, they will win. Because the NDP right now, what they're doing wrong, so wrong, is that they keep focusing on attacking the BC Conservatives. Oh, they have crazy candidates. Oh, well, they're not serious about X or Y issue. Okay, let's even say people even agree with you the candidates are crazy. They're really not. Every once in a while, you'll see one of them say something on Twitter 4 years ago in a slightly more coarse way than maybe you would have said it. But overall, nobody really cares about the statements. But let's just say they do. You guys suck at governing. You guys have been awful for the economy, awful for social issues. Crime is out of control. The drug crisis is disgusting for anybody to witness your guys' basically feeding into it. So why should anyone care about your criticisms of the BC Conservatives when you've been the party that's been driving the bus for the past 7 years? People will take pretty much anybody else at this point. And the Conservatives are the only other party that people really know can make a difference, that can actually create a change in government. And even then, the NDP are actually probably going to hemorrhage, I think, another couple points towards the Greens in terms of turnout. The Greens didn't get a candidate in every single riding, but overall, I think the Greens, wherever they are, they're going to grab up a lot of NDP voters who they're not quite willing to vote Conservative because maybe they just have still more of an anti-Conservative mentality, but they know the BC NDP are the actual crazy ones. What do you care more about as a voter? Somebody who said something on social media 4 years ago that you maybe don't quite agree with, but you probably also understand where they were coming from? Or do you not, or are you going to vote for or like care more about the party that has actual crazy policies? The NDP's policies are crazy. When David Eby penned that pathetic letter 2 days ago saying, I'm calling on the BC Conservatives to drop these 5 candidates because they said blah, 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 blah. It's like maybe you and all 93 of your candidates should drop out because you guys literally support just handing out free drugs. It resulted in the death of a 13-year-old the other day who was surrounded in safe supply drugs and safe supply paraphernalia, crack pipes, and snorting kits. You guys are the crazy ones. You guys are the ones who think that every single time there's an economic issue, that the government should just dump more money on the problem. That's crazy. You guys actually see criminals as victims. That's crazy. When it's crazy policy, that's always going to be a much worse thing than somebody who said something that maybe certain people don't like. Nobody actually thinks that their own social media profiles are squeaky clean. So when you go after somebody for saying something that you might have not said in the moment, nobody is actually going to get all that offended because everybody does that. Anyways, but now I kind of want to move on to what is, in my mind, the scariest statistics for the BC NDP. It shows the BC NDP's base is literally abandoning them. The NDP are only grabbing up a portion of their 2020 vote. When you're an incumbent party, what you want is for 80 to 95% of the people who voted for you last election committed to voting for you this election. I went over that and talked to my friend Chris from the Great Canadian Bagel podcast, who's a very good poll analyst, and he confirmed that that's generally the range you want to be in to have a good chance of being reelected. Well, David Eby's BC NDP, if I can zoom in right here, are only grabbing up 68.5% of what John Horgan took in 2020. Only 68.5% of 2020 NDP voters are thinking of voting for the NDP in this election. And I asked Chris from the Bagel podcast, well, what do you think about that? How is that? What kind of range is that? And he says, you are going to lose range. Not like, yeah, maybe it's not quite good. No, you're going to lose if you're taking in less than 70% of your 2020 voters, because it doesn't get that much better when you start to look at the other statistics. Like we have 13.4% of them going towards the Conservatives. 6.9% are still undecided, and then another party is basically also saying undecided. Maybe a couple of them vote for some fringe socialist party that's only running for a few ridings, but 13.4% is great for the Conservatives. You go to Wilkinson's Liberals from 2020, the NDP is only grabbing 11.5% of them. The Conservatives are grabbing 71.3%. Not an amazing statistic, but the Conservatives were not the Liberals, so that's not even their base, but they're pulling in 71% of another party's base from back in 2020. Now, just remember that the top line is the NDP, and the second line is the Conservatives, because those are the two ones we care about. The Green Party, it's kind of a smaller stat. Some of them are going over to the BC NDP, but look at that. 30.5% of 2020 BC Green voters are voting for the Conservatives. 37 are naturally still voting for the Greens, and then there's some more that are undecided. The Greens, because it's a small party, tends to have to cobble together a new coalition every single election, because in most ridings they don't have incumbent MPs or MLAs. Now, let's go to another party. Most of them from who are voting another party in 2020, so that would have been the Christian Heritage Party or other small parties, 92.6% are voting Conservative. Not that big a sample, but 107, decently substantial. Didn't remember or didn't vote, which basically is probably mostly people who just didn't vote. I doubt there's that many people who don't remember what they voted. 50.9% are voting Conservative. Only 19.4% are voting NDP. 4.3% are voting for the Green Party, and 20.8% are still undecided. Now, this obviously is a big vote that the Conservatives need to go after. People who didn't think it was worth it to vote in 2020. And frankly, I understand. It was a sluggish, sleepy election. It was basically, do you want the corporate liberal or the more blue-collar liberal? Because Horgan was more of a blue-collar NDP-ish liberal, and Wilkinson was a very corporate liberal. A lot of people stayed home. And if this ratio keeps up, the ratio between the Conservatives and NDP and who's capturing who in the didn't vote category, the Conservatives are going to have a big majority government, because that is a great takeaway. If they're taking half of the people who didn't vote last time, and the NDP are only grabbing 19.4%, based on the decided ratio, I think that's like more than 2/3 for the Conservatives, or about 2/3 for the Conservatives. If they keep winning that other 20% by 2/3, dude, their lead is going to be massive on election day. And I still think a lot of the pollsters could be underestimating how good the Conservatives' vote is. Notoriously, if you actually look at the ethnic crosstabs in these polls, you'll find South Asian and East Asians are only about 48% of the people, not percent, but only 38 or 40 of the responses were people from those communities. Naturally, some people from certain communities just don't answer polls. It's just not part of the culture to get on the phone and take a phone poll from someone. White people love taking phone polls all the time about nothing. Big disadvantage with white people, taking phone polls about absolute nonsense all day long. Other groups tend to be much smarter at just hanging up the phone because the phone poll is annoying. Regardless, though, those groups are very underpolled, so their numbers are all over the place. I don't see the NDP picking up South Asian voters or East Asian voters. Crime, SOGI 123, and affordability are massive issues for those groups, because they put up with the NDP saying they're going to solve these problems or try and get politics out of the classroom for so long, and they don't trust them anymore. You are going to have those communities swing super hard against the NDP because of SOGI 123 and because of drug decriminalization. A lot of Asian voters in Richmond aren't voting NDP, and it's mainly because of the drugs. They've put up with it for a long time. They were being very patient with the NDP, hoping that the NDP was actually going to get the drug problem sorted out. They were going to crack down on the amount of usage, or their safe supply program was somehow going to work, and we were all going to live in utopia. It hasn't worked. They're voting Conservative now, and that's a group that would have normally defaulted NDP Liberal. If we're talking in terms of federal politics, they usually aren't as much as Conservative voters. This year they are, because they are only voting on one or two issues, and the NDP can't satisfy them on any of them. Anyways, that's not it for me. What am I doing here, guys? I'm not giving you guys your money's worth. I just want to bring up the Main Street provincial wide poll right now of what's going on. Since today's tracking poll, it's contracted a little bit for the Conservatives, but they're still doing pretty well, and they still have the better chance of winning a majority government. Right now, Main Street is projecting that the BC Conservatives win 48 seats to 45 seats, with a 60% chance of grabbing that majority government. I still think that we're going to end up with the Conservatives driving out way more of their vote than the NDP. I couldn't imagine what it's like to be a BC NDP voter these days. I'm not trying to go after anyone here, but I would feel like you're going to be more apathetic. That I voted for them last time. They promised a lot, and even if I generally agree with their worldview, they didn't deliver. So even if you're tacitly saying you're voting for the NDP, I guarantee their turnout is going to be 70%, 65%. Whereas the conservative turnout on people who are supporting the Conservatives saying they're going to vote Conservative, it's going to be like 85, 90% turnout. It's a change election. And the reason why a change election is so powerful is because your people are empowered to vote, and the other people are usually only voting out of just obligation. I vote every year. I like David Eby a little bit more than Rusted. That's not a winning narrative. The idea that we're doing a bad job, but the other guys could do a worse job, like the NDP has been saying, doesn't win elections, especially because nobody believes that somehow these guys wanted to go in a more small government direction are going to hurt anyone. In Canada's history, every time things have been great, it's usually been with small governments. It's not been with big governments who pass bloated like social programs in order to make people better off. People have made themselves better off. The social programs always come in when a government is screwing things up on the economy and people are getting poorer and poorer, and the government wants to pretend like it can fix the scenario by handing out money here and there rather than letting people get back to work and spend their own money. Anyways, that should be it for me today, guys. If you live in British Columbia, go and hit up your local BC campaign. Help them door knock. That's one of the big things that campaigns always have a problem getting in every part of the country and every level of government. People who don't want to door knock. Go try door knocking. Tell them Wyatt sent you. Go try it out. Go just talk to people at the doors. That's pretty much all it is. Door opens. Hey, how are you doing? Hey, are you guys planning on voting this election? Where are your big issues? That's pretty much it. Super, super easy. Give it a try. It's how you you move from just engaging online to making sure that you can help flip entire neighborhoods from orange to blue. That's it for me today, guys. Have a good one.